have some stories. And this picture I'm passing around shows the very first time I saw Srila Prabhupada was coming off the airplane. You can see the date. It was in May, actually it was May 9th, 1969. And just the month before, I received a letter from Srila Prabhupada, April 29th. And the letter was answering questions I had about Jesus Christ. So just, Srila Prabhupada in the letter said, I will take time to talk to you when I come to Columbus, Ohio. So he came the next month, May 9th, and I was initiated on May, I think it was May 14th. So things were happening very fast. So like 5 days after I met Srila Prabhupada, I got initiated. I'm still not qualified, but that can show his great compassion and hope for the Kali people. And so I was very excited to see Srila Prabhupada. Just one devotee opened a preaching center in Columbus, Ohio. His name's Prajunya. He's in New York right now. Just one person came, and he was even working. He had a job. But he came and he had get-togethers Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And he taught the Bhagavad Gita. And so simply one person who was sincere attracted people. I was the very first person who got initiated in Columbus, Ohio. And so there were a few devotees that came from New York, and then Hayagriva, or Howard Wheeler, he was teaching at Ohio State University, and Kirtananda came out from Vrindavana, and some devotees came from New York. And this was right before Srila Prabhupada was coming. Narayana was building an altar. We didn't have deities. This was just a house. It was just a brick house, 2 stories with a little attic where some of the women, we got to stay when Prabhupada was there. Srila Prabhupada stayed on the 2nd floor, and the men stayed in the basement. And it was just a regular house, but the excitement before Srila Prabhupada was coming was so contagious. These other devotees had seen Srila Prabhupada, and they were really excited, so I was really excited. I didn't know what to expect. And you can see in the picture, if you pass that around, we went to the airport, and there's a picture there's a picture of Prajunya. He's got a suit on and he's barefooted. It's kind of a funny article too. Like the first line, they said, is this the airline's idea of in-flight entertainment? Because we were having kirtan. And Srila Prabhupada was late, explains that finally they said to stop chanting, and everyone complied. And then Srila Prabhupada came off the plane, and I was really kind of excited, nervous. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I was going to see auras, or I didn't know what was going to happen. It was the 1960s, so, but Srila Prabhupada came off the plane, and that was the first time I saw him smiling. And then we drove back to the house, and Srila Prabhupada got situated in his room, just a simple room, and so he was in Columbus for a while. And one thing that happened was Allen Ginsberg came, who was very famous at that time. He was even famous before the hippies, like in the beatnik era. He was a poet, and he had some books out, so people knew about him. So, and he also, Allen Ginsberg also used to go around and chant Hare Krishna. He had a big, Uncle Sam top hat on, chant Hare Krishna. He didn't have the potency to spread the movement like Srila Prabhupada did, but somehow he was attracted. So when Allen Ginsberg came, he was talking to Srila Prabhupada just like, Swamiji, I'll talk and then you can talk. They were going to have a program at Ohio State University in Hitchcock Hall. And I was really surprised because we were watching the way Allen Ginsberg was talking to Srila Prabhupada. And I was afraid to say anything to Srila Prabhupada. And here was someone just talking like, taking charge, and Srila Prabhupada was really humble. And so we had posters we put up all over campus that had a picture of Allen Ginsberg on one side, had a picture of Srila Prabhupada on the other side. And invited everyone to Hitchcock Hall on May 12, 1969 in Columbus, Ohio. And so we went there, and Srila Prabhupada was up on the stage, and I can't remember how many devotees there were, probably about 15 or maybe, probably about 15 devotees, maybe 20. And we were around Srila Prabhupada, and the place was completely packed. There was a balcony, and it was packed. There was about 2,000 people that came. And these were all Midwestern, as Hare Krishna said, clean-faced kids. They weren't the bohemians in New York. They weren't the hippies in San Francisco. They were just pretty much straight college students who didn't really know about Hare Krishna, unless they probably didn't even know the mantra unless they'd seen the play called Hair, where they chanted Hare Krishna. And so a lot of them mostly came to see Allen Ginsberg. And Allen Ginsberg had his microphone, Srila Prabhupada had his microphone, and they both gave a talk. Srila Prabhupada's accent was a little more distinct back then, and then I was going to be initiated in just a couple of days, and I was sitting, just looking at Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was like facing the audience like this, and we were on the sides, and I was like at the very end. And I knew I was going to be initiated. I was just praying and praying to Srila Prabhupada. I couldn't believe I was going to get initiated. I hardly even knew what that meant. And I was just praying to Srila Prabhupada, just let me surrender everything. And when I was praying like that, Srila Prabhupada, he really had to turn his head to look at me, but he turned his head. And this was a mystical experience that happened, that only happened one time when I was around him, but just by his glance, my whole consciousness suddenly changed. It was almost like I forgot about myself completely and could see everything differently. Not like seeing visions, but seeing everything according to the scripture. We only had the Bhagavad Gita back then, and the books Srila Prabhupada brought from the Jaladuta, the first 3 volumes of the Bhagavatam. But it was just like time stood still, and I looked out at the audience and saw all these people in the mode of ignorance, and then I looked at Srila Prabhupada, and he looked like he was effulgent, and I could really understand that he had just come here to deliver us, that he had so much compassion. And, some ordinary people may go, oh, look at the Swamis being worshipped, and people bow down to him. But it wasn't like that at all. I was realizing what an austerity it was for a pure devotee to come into the material world. And then we had this kirtan that was the most amazing kirtan I've ever seen in my entire life. I've seen a lot of kirtans, but this one was amazing because Srila Prabhupada was chanting, and gradually all the people in the audience started to catch on to the Hare Krishna mantra. They started memorizing Hare Krishna mantra. And I'm sure that most of them were chanting for the very first time in their life. But gradually, everyone started chanting. And there's one verse that said that Lord Chaitanya broke open the storehouse of the love of God, and that always reminds me of this kirtan. It was just like Srila Prabhupada broke open the storehouse of the love of God, because not only did everyone start chanting, they started chanting like devotees. They started going crazy. Then all the devotees, we started standing up and dancing on the stage. And then people in the audience started coming up toward the stage. Some were standing in their chairs. And Srila Prabhupada stood up on the Vyasasana, which was just like this box with a pillow. Srila Prabhupada actually stood up on the Vyasasana, and he was dancing. And he was taking flowers from his garland and throwing them, and even the people in the audience were trying to catch them, like everyone became a devotee. So Srila Prabhupada had this power to get people to chant, to get people to have a taste. He actually was empowered to do that. And I had just had this experience where Prabhupada looked at me and my whole consciousness changed. And anyway, I started chanting, just no one really cared what they looked like. Everyone was going crazy. I would just start chanting like a total crazy person, I'm sure. But it didn't matter because I could feel Krishna was in the holy name, like so powerful. I felt like my body was invisible. It was just like Srila Prabhupada had the power to allow people to get a real taste of bhakti, you know, and I felt like the holy name was Krishna, and at one point it felt like every cell in my body meant Krishna, and everyone was, what happened was Allen Ginsberg grabbed his microphone and he said, "I've never seen so many people jumping out of their skins." And it was like that. It was like everyone was just going crazy. And Srila Prabhupada said, a person who has Krishna prema is like a drunk man. He doesn't know whether his cloth is on or off. It was kind of like that. You just forgot about everything. You forgot. It was just, everyone was caught up in this love of Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada was so powerful. And after that, you know, he couldn't even go to sleep. It was just like shaking just from the energy. And then we were in the same house with Srila Prabhupada. There was Chintamani dasi, Haiger's wife, and myself, and another Mamaji, I forget her name, that she was initiated. She was from New York. She always wore bell bottoms because she told me she wouldn't be like Bob Dylan in her next lifetime. So, I mean, Srila Prabhupada was initiating people that were, you know, maybe not understand the philosophy too well, but he was very compassionate. And so then someone said, do you want to wear Srila Prabhupada's clothes? And they gave me his clothes, and they didn't look dirty. There was no dirt on them, you know. It was like silk, and they smelled really good. So, okay, you know. And they said, okay, go in the bathroom and run some water in the bathtub and wash the clothes. And then there was a line going through the hallway, and I was in the middle of washing the clothes, and Srila Prabhupada had to come in the bathroom, and sometimes you feel like, oh, he saw me doing some service. You'd feel really good because he might say something. And then, so he was in Columbus, Ohio. That was really the greatest thing to see, that kirtan. And he was very, very compassionate. And one time, we had just a very small temple room. It was about a fourth the size of this room. And that was the first time I'd seen devotees dancing. And one time, Srila Prabhupada got off the Vyasana, and they were saying the giant prayers. Everyone was praying out their obeisances, and when Srila Prabhupada came by me, he stopped and he reached down, he touched me on the back like that. And then Narayana, he was saying the giant prayers, and Srila Prabhupada went upstairs, and Narayana came over and said, "Did Prabhupada touch you? Did Srila Prabhupada touched you? Do you know what that means?" And I felt really blessed. And it didn't matter if you're a woman or a man or young or old or what nationality, it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered being around Srila Prabhupada was in sincerity, because he could see right through you. You know, I always felt kind of like shy around Srila Prabhupada because you knew he could see right through you, but at the same time, he had so much love and compassion. And just like, I saw him in other temples also, but you could be, later on when there were a lot more devotees, you could be in a room, Srila Prabhupada would be giving a lecture, like every devotee would say, "Srila Prabhupada looked at me," or "Srila Prabhupada answered a question, I didn't even ask it." Or everyone felt like, you know, maybe they just saw Srila Prabhupada one time and Prabhupada looked at them. Like one devotee was throwing flower petals and Srila Prabhupada looked up, and they remember that their entire life, you know. And some devotees never saw Srila Prabhupada personally. But just like so many devotees, so many people here have come and felt Srila Prabhupada's mercy. And so then after Columbus, he was going to Vrindavana for the very first time, which at that time Vrindavana was this really old house. You had to walk a path about 2.5 miles and 2 miles through the woods. So there were 2 carloads of devotees. I was sitting in the car ready to go, really excited, and the brand new president came out, Jagopati, said, "You can't go." Srila Prabhupada said, "Only brahmacharis and households could live at New Vrindavana." And I was crying, and I was like, and then there was just one Indian lady, and she ran up and she told Srila Prabhupada, and he said, "She can come, she can stay as long as I'm there and then go to another temple." So I was really happy. I got to get back in the car, and then they took off, and they got to New Vrindavana. I'd never been there before also. And there was not even a road going up to the house. There was just a path. You could hardly see the path in some smart parts. It was just like grass that was smashed down. But we couldn't keep up with Srila Prabhupada. He was like walking so fast. He was way ahead of us. I got there. I was like, when are we going to get there? I had all my possessions at that time, which was a new sleeping bag, a few saris and a brush and some tilak, and that was about it. Bhagavad Gita. And I was like, when are we going to get there? Srila Prabhupada was already there. And then, so when I finally got there, I was like, oh, finally. Srila Prabhupada was sitting outside. It was in May, but I remember it was very hot. It was probably in the 80s, and it just seemed like Srila Prabhupada transferred the whole, wherever he was in the spiritual world. It says that in the scriptures also that sometimes the pure devotee goes to the holy places, and then the holy places become purified. And I've been to the holy places also, but actually, when I saw Srila Prabhupada, it felt more ecstatic than going to the holy places, because he's pure devotee of Krishna. And just by, for me, just like seeing him talk, it gave me so much faith that Krishna was real, because here was someone who actually knew Krishna. He actually was an associate of Krishna. So when we finally got to New Vrindavana, we were sitting scattered around, and Srila Prabhupada looked really happy, and Satyabhama and her husband, they were living in this remodeled chicken coop. They were I think they were the only householders living at New Vrindavana. She came out with prasadam, we were eating prasadam, just watching Srila Prabhupada. And I was really hungry because we had the long drive, and then we had the long walk, and when she came out with seconds and we were scattered around, she accidentally missed me, but I couldn't talk in front of Srila Prabhupada. I couldn't say I want more or anything like that. In my mind, I just thought, oh, I wish I could have more. And at that very instant, Srila Prabhupada looked up, he looked right at me, and he goes, "Oh, you want more?" And it scared me so much. It scared me so much, I just nodded my head. And I was so scared. I thought, oh my God, he knows everything I'm thinking. I became really paranoid for a couple of days. Every time I saw Srila Prabhupada, I thought, I better not think. And then I think some swear word or something, and I couldn't control my mind. Oh no, he knew I thought that. I was really embarrassed. So every time I saw Srila Prabhupada for a couple of days, I wanted to just crawl in a hole and disappear. And then one day he knew what I was going through. So he went out of his way, he came up to me, I was sitting outside, and he had this big smile, like he was amused by the whole thing. He just looked at me and said, "It is all right." I felt whew, he knows I'm not my mind. Hare Krishna. And so there are a lot of different little incidents that happened. One time, I was cleaning his room, he'd go out for a walk. He was at the New Vrindavana. It's a little house, but he was on the top floor. They had a mattress on the floor, and they had little Radha Krishna deities. And I would sweep it and mop it, and then I would be out of there before he came back. So one day, I don't know what happened, maybe it was raining, he came back before I was finished. I just started sweeping. I was so nervous. He was sitting on the mattress chanting, just looking at me, and I was sweeping. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta get all the dirt. I guess I was taking too long, because it was the only time he didn't yell at me, he just raised his voice. That was enough to really scare me. But he said something like, "What are you messing around for? You know, why don't you use a dustpan?" And I felt like it was the end of the world. I just got initiated, and I thought, oh, it's the end of the world. Srila Prabhupada isn't happy with me, and I had all these tears coming down. And I got downstairs, and I was like, getting the dust in, and I was crying, not out loud, but Srila Prabhupada just looked he was smiling, he looked kind of happy. And then he had a trunk that had come from India. It was a black metal trunk, and there was a picture of Bhaktisiddhanta with a garland around it. And he took the garland off of the picture, and he held it out to me. He said, "Here, this is from Krishna with blessings." And it was so powerful because it felt like Krishna was right there. And I took the garland, and I was still crying. He goes, "Isn't it all right?" He always used to say that, "Isn't it all right?" So he was very merciful to women, and I'm glad I joined him like that because it was before we had, as one Mataji said, the wall of saffron surrounding Prabhupada. He was surrounded by brahmacharis and sannyasis, and there was no hope at that time to. I actually got to put a garland on him and wash his clothes, and that was really nectar. And then things were happening so fast, so I had to go to another temple. I went to Los Angeles. It was the La Cienega temple. It was the first temple in Los Angeles. And every day, 2 devotees would go with Srila Prabhupada, would go on a walk. And the 2 women and then 2 men. It was really nice. We'd get in the car and we'd get to go for a walk with Srila Prabhupada. And at that time, that was the big temple. There was Vishajan Swami. Everyone looked up to him. Was he a Swami? Vishajan. And then there was a lot of famous devotees. Taman Krishna was the president. And at that time, everyone was going to open temples. And that's when I was sent to Japan to open the temple in Japan. So I got initiated, I got married to this total stranger, and went to Japan. That was like a little over half a year. And the thing is, I look back and how did that even happen? Because Srila Prabhupada, he really wanted a temple in Japan. And so somehow things were happening. Srila Prabhupada was empowering us, and he can still empower us, but I'm not as fortunate as Prabhu here, because I have to go back and remember, wow, how did, Srila Prabhupada sent us to Japan. We didn't know anyone, we didn't have any money, we didn't even speak the language. He said, "That's okay, if your house is on fire, you can convey that." And everything seemed to make sense. It's like, I didn't even think twice about getting on the plane and going, and then all the books at that time were printed in Japan. If you look at the old books, it'll say Dinapan. And so Srila Prabhupada came 2 times when I was there, and that was real nice. I got my Gayatri from Srila Prabhupada, and then he came, he had just given a sannyasa initiation in Hawaii, and they all came to Japan. We had this tiny little house. And we were going out on Harinam every day. We had Bhakti Guideheads and printed in Japanese, and I'd sell Bhakti Guideheads. I knew enough Japanese to sell Bhakti Guidehead. And then they started talking in Japanese. I'd go, "Nihongo wa karanai, I don't speak Japanese." And they go, "You just spoke it." But anyway, Srila Prabhupada came and with all these sannyasis, and I was the only woman. I felt very uncomfortable, and I was sleeping out in the car because there was no place to sleep. And it was like the first time we were chanting Sanskrit, and then one day someone said, "You can go get your Gayatri mantra." I didn't really know what that was, but Srila Prabhupada said, "Sit here." I went to his apartment. He said, "Sit here." I got to sit right next to Srila Prabhupada and get the paper, and then he showed me how to count on the fingers. I'd never seen that before. And then he said, "Now you do it." And I did it. And he looked at the person I was married to, and he goes, "Oh, very intelligent," because I'd done it right. And just little things like that would really be encouraging. And then the second time Srila Prabhupada came to Japan, the person I was married to took sannyas. I guess he'd been thinking about it. he asked Srila Prabhupada, can I take sannyas? And then Srila Prabhupada said, you have to get my permission. And I said, I thought for a minute, I said, okay. And that meant I had to go to another temple. So I went to China, and I got to see Srila Prabhupada. He gave me a flower. I still have it. I smashed it and kept it. And then I saw him a few different times, but what happened was I ended up with the Jagannath deities that were on the altar in Japan. That's a long story, I won't tell the whole thing, but they were supposed to go to Hong Kong, but then Borjan was there and he said, you're too attached, keep them, and it wasn't really authorized yet, but when I went back to America, then I went to the Philippines, and then I went back to America, and I stopped in Los Angeles, and Srila Prabhupada was there, and everyone said, what are you doing with your own deities? Because I was living in the ashram, and then the Jagannath deities in this box, and everyone was saying you shouldn't have these deities in a box in the ashram, and they said, Srila Prabhupada said, worship the deities in the temple, you don't need to have your own deities. But I was really attached to them because that was all they really had. And so then, we could have darshan with Srila Prabhupada. It was the first time I really got up the courage to talk to Srila Prabhupada. And I took the box of deities, and I went up, and there was no one else in the room, and he wanted to know how I was doing in the Philippines. I talked to him for a little bit. I got up the courage to talk, and then I said, Srila Prabhupada, I have Lord Jagannath in this box, and I want them to see you. And I opened the box and stood the deities up. This was in 1972, this spring, I think. And he was really smiling. He said, oh, they're gorgeous. Those are the deities I still have. And then he said, so your husband's taking sannyas? I said, yes. He said, then you just make Lord Jagannath your husband, Balaram your son, and Subhadra your daughter. He said it 2 times. And, but before he said that, what happened was, I said, Srila Prabhupada, everyone's telling me I can't worship these deities. Because even the president at the time, Jayatita, had come up and said, we don't want to make you cry, but Srila Prabhupada said this, and Srila Prabhupada said. So I said, Srila Prabhupada, everyone's telling me I can't worship these deities. And he said, who's saying? And then I started saying, Srila Prabhupada, you said, I started to tell Srila Prabhupada what he said. Because everyone said Srila Prabhupada said this. And he just interrupted me. He goes, never mind. You make Lord Jagannath your life and soul, and you will be happy your whole life. So you can see Srila Prabhupada says different things to different people, and would act in different ways with different people. And then at the end of the conversation, I said, is there any chance of you going back to Godhead? And he said, you just do what I told you, and he said, you'll become fully liberated Krishna conscious and go back to God in this very lifetime. But that's the catch, doing what he told, that's, Krishna, it's not always easy. But, so after Srila Prabhupada gave me that instruction, everywhere I went with the deities, everyone was like, Chai! They were on the altar. They've been on the altar in so many temples. And no one ever said anything to me after that about the deities, but anyway, there's a lot of other little pastimes, but maybe someone else would like to talk.